Hey guys, we're on part two, the principles of design. I hope the elements of art went well based on what I saw. You guys are doing great. Yes, you can use photos, and I want you to off the internet just to make it easier. So please feel free to look up photos and go ahead and repost those. So I'm sorry I didn't make that clear. All right, principles of design. The principles of design describe the way that the artists use the elements of art in a work of art. One principle is balance, and basically, balance is the distribution of the elements of art so that you get the sense of it feeling balanced and stable. So you have asymmetrical balance and you have symmetrical balance. So symmetrical balance is obviously if you fold the picture in half, both sides would be the same, um, just like the top two photos. Asymmetrical balance is when you fold it in half, it would be different. However, you want to think of visual weight. And so even though the two sides are different, the visual weight seems the same. So for instance, the palm tree ocean picture on the bottom, even though those trees are so much bigger on the right, the light and the size of the reflected ocean is kind of balanced with the weight and the size of the trees. So the visual weight is relatively the same, therefore making it seem balanced. There's also something called the rule of thirds. And this is something that a lot of you do and you don't even really know that you do it. But when you put something on your artwork or when you compose your artwork or a photo, you think of your the space that you're using in the rule of thirds. So with the surf border on the right, you would break up your photo or your artwork in those thirds, and the hot spots are the white lines. So if you line up things to the white lines vertically or horizontally, you will always get a balanced, very eye-pleasing picture. So keep that in mind when you do your final assignment, which we will talk about later. Another principle is called emphasis, and emphasis is when you highlight one area to catch the viewer's eye. A way that they do it is by doing something to contrast from the rest of the picture. So all of these photos have emphasis, and you probably are wondering what about the flower is emphasized, but it's because it is the focal point of the picture. It's like so zoomed in, it's emphasized that the flower is there. You can emphasize by color alone, by a certain shape. Something that I always think about is when Taylor Swift went through that phase where she was only wearing red lipstick. Like she was known for those red lips. She even, named one of her CDs after that. Think about guys, when you guys get a tux, you emphasize your bow tie or the handkerchief that you put in the pocket. And girls, sometimes you emphasize like a piece of jewelry, or you emphasize like your purse and shoes with like a rather simple dress when you guys get dressed up and go somewhere. So you guys use emphasis all the time. You just sometimes, I guess, don't really realize that you do, but it's emphasis. Okay, there's also something called movement and rhythm, and these are relatively the same. Some people make them into different categories, but I'll make them the same. It's the use of reoccurring elements to direct the eye through the image. So, rhythm or movement is when something is composed in a way that you're constantly looking around the picture and it looks like something literally is moving, or it's just causing your eye to continually move around the picture. Um, So these are some photographs that were taken by some Westminster students. This one is obviously a famous painting or print, but the movement is in the waves, so you can kind of get a sense of that. This photographer has captured the movement literally in place of the sand going through the fingers. There's some really cool stuff you can do with a photo where the light looks like it's moving. This is a movement caught in literal time. And with this, it's like the bike is standing still, but the idea of the movement is the lines of the lights that are moving left to right very quickly. We have pattern, and pattern is the repeating of an object or symbol all over the work of art. So you could have a literal pattern like A, B, C, like we learned when we were in kindergarten, but you can also have pattern that where there's a variety of roughly the same kind of look. So it doesn't have to be perfectly the same, but it could be the same look repeated. Like, for instance, the leaves. Like, the leaves in this picture there's lots of different sizes and, the shapes are a little bit different, but it's the same look over and over and over again. And so that would be pattern. Repetition is different because it works like pattern, but it makes the art a little bit more active. Instead of it focusing on one particular pattern over and over, it actually is more like a repeating idea of something. So this famous painting of Marilyn Monroe, it definitely is a pattern where it's the same head over and over, but it's repeating because it's just different. Like, each face is different. So you would say it's pattern and repetition. This photo here at Botanical Gardens, one of the art students at Westminster caught this reflection on this wall. And the idea is this photo shows repetition because it's the repeating of the brick, it's the repeating of the bushes, and it's also the repeating of this reflection against the wall. And then the same idea with this photo up to the right. So it's, well, let me show you this. So it's like the repeating of the same thing over and over, but it's not necessarily the same. So repetition and pattern can be a lot of like, but repetition can be a lot different too, because you would have there would be more difference. Like, there's more variety in repetition than really in pattern, I guess. All right, proportion. So sometimes artists and photographers play with proportion to show visual interest or to show depth. So for instance, this photo is interesting. It shows proportion because this football player is very large in the front, but here Mr. Layton looks really tiny compared to the size of this player. Like, this cactus is obviously not as big as this building, so it's giving you the sense of that this building is farther behind you standing close to the cactus. So artists and photographers can use it to just make things more sense, to give an idea of perspective and depth in a photo. Sometimes they're silly about it. This is a Matchbox car and this is a real car. And so that's kind of a fun way to show proportion. And then this is a famous painting. Um, oh, this is a famous painting that's just being kind of silly, that overemphasizes proportion. Okay, and then you have variety. Variety is the use of several elements of design to hold the viewer's attention and to guide the viewer's eye through and around the work. So the variety is basically when you just have a lot of stuff going on and it just gives you lots to look at. Shapes, sizes, colors, um, the way you use space, even like this picture of the little tomatoes, that's just tomatoes, but there's a lot of variety in there. This famous painting from Gustav Klimt is there's just a lot of variety because there's lots of textures and shapes and um, golds and silvers and all kinds of stuff. So variety is there's a lot of variety in everything, but you can use variety to your benefit in your artwork and in your photographs. And then unity is kind of a tricky one. It's the feeling of harmony between all parts of the work of art, which creates a sense of completeness. So, for instance, the opposite of unity would be like if you took a picture of everybody's feet and everybody was wearing tennis shoes and then one girl was wearing flip flops, that's not unified. Something is kind of weirdly standing out. So if you look for unity in a photograph or your artwork, it's just like everything works together. There isn't something that seems out of place or it doesn't seem like it doesn't draw too much attention. It just, you know, it just goes together. So you might be saying, Mrs. Vogel, what's with the red sweater-shirted girl in the fall leaves? Well, it's like unified because she's clearly a girl playing outside in the fall. Like it's not like she's in a bikini and throwing up leaves. You know what I'm saying? Like um, you can find unification in a lot of your photos if it just kind of makes sense and looks complete. Um, Another example, unity can be created by simplicity, repetition, or proximity. So these are all unified because it's like repeating of the same thing, or it's very simple and they all kind of go together. You can make it unity complex. You could also make it very simple. Um, Okay, and then here is the elements and principles. I'm sorry, I'm asking you what elements and principles do you see? And this is when I would ask you, what do you guys see? There's line, shape, I see form, the bodies are three-dimensional, color, black and white, the space between the bodies, the texture, it feels like you could like almost feel them. They're balanced. There's emphasis on the bodies. They're moving. It's a pattern. It's like a repeating object. It's repetition. It's repeating over and over a body that's moving. There's proportion, unity. So all I'm trying to say is you can have multiple elements and multiple principles in your work of art. It's not just black or white or like one or the other. You can have lots in there. And that's the way artists can use, in their arsenal of all the things they could do to make attractive, cool artwork or photographs.